They told you the Inquisition was about heresy. It wasn't. Not really. What it was actually about was a bureaucracy, a permanent self-funding enforcement system built to protect institutional power. It had surveillance networks, paid informants, sealed records, and a chain of command that didn't answer to any king. And the confession chamber, this is where it shifts. That wasn't really a spiritual device. It was a data collection system. Once you see it that way, the rest starts to line up. Because it didn't really end. It was secularized, adapted, exported into new systems. Different names, but the same underlying structure. The CIA black site, the FISA court, the NSA server farm. Different century, same architecture. The church built the cage. And after that, every system just repainted the bars. By the end of this episode, you're going to recognize the structure, not as something from the past, but as something that's still operating inside the institutions that now claim to protect you. Welcome back to Hidden Forces in History. I am your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate, CEO of Command Your Brand. Check us out over at commandyourbrand.com. Every financial empire we've looked at in this season needed the same thing. Not just bankers, not just lawyers, not just politicians on the payroll. They needed something with reach, something that could extend beyond contracts and influence into someone's home, their business, their family, and make the threat real. Money can buy access, but it doesn't hold it. Fear does. The Spanish Inquisition usually gets framed as religious extremism, burning heretics, zealous priests, medieval brutality. That's the version people remember, but that's not what it was built for. Ferdinand and Isabella didn't create the Inquisition to save souls. They built it to control a financial class. And once that system existed, it didn't stay isolated. It became a model. The confession chamber becomes the interrogation room. The informant network becomes the intelligence community. The tribunal becomes the closed court. The names change. The structure, well, it doesn't. In 1391, something happens in Spain that quietly reshapes the financial landscape. Violence breaks out across Jewish communities, Seville, Valencia, Barcelona, and then it spreads. Thousands are killed. Hundreds of thousands convert, not by belief, by necessity. These converts, the conversos, become the new Christians overnight. But they didn't lose what made them powerful. They kept their businesses, their trade networks, their financial relationships across Europe. And more importantly, they kept their capital. They attend Mass on Sunday, and then they continue operating as they always had. By 1480, they're deeply embedded in Spanish society, wealthy, connected, holding positions in the court, in the church, and in the treasury. And that's where the problem emerges. Ferdinand and Isabella are trying to build a centralized state, which means they need to control over money and visibility into where it moves. A class of wealthy new Christians with independent networks across Europe, networks that the crown doesn't fully control. That's just not out of curiosity. That's a structural threat. So the question isn't theological, it's operational. How do you audit a financial class that operates outside of your line of sight? The answer is the Inquisition. But here's the detail that most people miss. The Spanish Inquisition isn't controlled by the church. It's controlled by the crown. It's created by the crown, and it's directed by the crown, answering only to the crown. Even when Pope Sixtus IV protests, warning that it's being used for greed and ambition, not faith, it doesn't matter. Because at that point, the system has already shifted. This isn't about religion. It's about intelligence. Permanent, centralized, and protected by secrecy. In 1483, Ferdinand appoints Tomás de Torquemada as the Inquisitor General. This is where it is becoming something more deliberate. Torquemada doesn't build a ministry. He builds a network. Regional tribunals spread across major cities, all reporting back to a central authority in Madrid, the Suprema. Each tribunal is staffed, structured, and standardized. This isn't improvisation, it's design. The accused never knows who's accused them. Accusations are sealed. Identities are classified. There's no confrontation, no appeal, no real defense. And this is where it tightens. There's no right to silence either. The only path forward is confession. But not just admission, a full, detailed account with names, connections, and anything that expands the investigation. Sounds like FISA, doesn't it? And that's the key shift. The confession isn't the end of the process. It's the beginning of the next one. Because the file is what matters. And those files, well, they don't disappear. A name recorded in 1490 doesn't stay there. It follows the family forward. Children inherit it, so do grandchildren. This isn't just control of individuals, it's control across generations. And then there's the incentive structure. When someone is convicted, their property is confiscated. Part goes to the crown, part goes to the tribunal, so the system funds itself, which means more cases generate more revenue. At that point, it's not just enforcement, it's a machine. But a system like this only works if it can see. So they build a network to do exactly that. The familiares, the civilian informants embedded across society. Merchants, tradesmen, port workers, and local officials. In some cities, it's estimated that 1 in 10 adult males is connected to the system in some way. They're not launching investigations, they're observing, reporting small details. A neighbor who avoids certain foods, a family with unusual routines, a merchant receiving letters from unexpected places. Each report becomes a file, and that file might sit there quietly for years until it's needed. And this is where the behavior starts to shift. Because once people understand the system exists, they don't need to be caught. They just need to believe they could be. You don't know who's reporting on you, so you adjust. You perform loyalty, publicly, repeatedly. That's the function of a surveillance system at scale. Not enforcement, behavior control. From here, the system evolves, but it doesn't disappear. The confession chamber becomes a refined extraction tool, designed not just to punish, but to produce usable intelligence. Financial targeting becomes more explicit. Networks mapped, assets seized, and capital redirected. The model spreads geographically, then administratively, embedding itself into colonial systems and institutional frameworks. And then something important happens. It detaches from religion entirely. Figures like Cardinal Richelieu and Joseph Fouché take the structure, remove the theology, and keep everything else. Surveillance continues, files expand, and power stabilizes around the information. In England, Francis Walsingham formalizes it into a permanent intelligence function. In the United States, it's adapted again, through the OSS, through Allen Dulles, through the incorporation networks like Reinhard Gehlen. Different systems, same methodology. Files, networks, secrecy, control. And that's when it turns inward, through programs like those run by J. Edgar Hoover. The pattern becomes even harder to ignore. Surveillance isn't just about catching threats, it's about shaping behavior at scale. That's the continuity. We started this season with money, followed it through banking systems, offshore networks, and institutional structures. But money on its own doesn't hold power. Enforcement does. That's what makes it durable. The Inquisition wasn't an outlier. It was a prototype. Spain in 1480, France in the 1600s, Britain in the late 1500s, America in 1947, digital systems in the 2000s. Same structure, refined, adapted, and still operating, right now. So the real question isn't whether the system exists, it's what happens to it when power shifts. Does it move with the money? Does it stay in the state? Or does it become something else entirely? And that's where we're going next. Same playbook, different century. This has been Hidden Forces in History. I'm Jeremy Ryan Slate. Please like this video, leave us a comment, and smash the subscribe button if you want more Hidden Forces in History.